Soft ears. Who doesn't like soft ears? They're probably one of the most consistent, most reliable, high-end hi-fi brand out there in the audiophile hobby as a whole. They release stuff like the RSV, the RS10, the Volume, the Turi. All those IEMs are so well respected that I can't help but anticipate every single one of their new releases. And today, I'm happy to tell you that I have the Softears new Twilight. I've been listening to this for a few days now. Many hours have been sank into this IEM, and that should tell you a lot of how much I enjoy this already. I don't listen to IEM for that long if I don't like it. So this is gonna be a good review with some caveats, of course. It's not my favorite IEM ever, but there's so much to love about this IEM, especially if you're a fan of single dynamic driver, especially if you're a fan of more relaxed tuning. This has captured me in a way that is surprising. So how did it do that? Let's jump into it. Hey friends, Tim here, welcome back to another video on Guess Audio, and today we have a review of the new Softears Twilight. Now this is awesome. As a single dynamic driver, probably one of my favorite single dynamic driver out there. The other one being the IE600 from Sennheiser. I have a review of that as well if you guys want to watch that. But this is tuned vastly different from the IE600. You can own both if you want and you would not feel bored because they're just that different and they'll gear towards different tastes for sure. Now for me, you guys know that I love my female vocals, I love my sparkly treble, so the tuning like the Twilight, which leans on the more relaxed side, a little bit on the warmer low end side, not so much treble, this style of tuning generally doesn't fit my taste that well. But to my biggest surprise, this is addicting to me. I really enjoy listening to music on the Twilight. Like I said, I've sank so many hours into this thing like you would not believe. Now, what makes this so special? What makes this stand out from all the warm tuning IEMs that are out on the market today that I don't like? Let's first get into it with the bass. Now, the bass in here lives up to the dynamic driver reputation. It is impactful, the sub bass is rumbly and it hits low, and with the type of tuning that it has, the bass feels wide and meaty and full of body as well. The texture here is also really nice. Just the bass quality in general is really well done in the Twilight. My only complaint is the bass power. The bass quality is really good. Check all the boxes. I want more of it. I want more bass. I want to hear more of that dynamic punch. I want to hear more rumble. The Twilight just doesn't give me enough. Like, it leaves me wanting more power-wise. Now, for those of you who EQ their IEM, you guys would not have this problem because this is really easy to EQ. Just bump up the bass by 2-3 dBs or so, sub bass by 2-3 dBs or so, and you'll get the bass response that you want out of these. But as a reviewer, I do need to review based on its default tuning, and based on its default tuning, it needs more bass. Quality is amazing. I just want more of it. Next is the mid-range. Now this has a warm tuning, so male vocals, instruments that live in this lower range are gonna come across quite full and meaty and rich. So for those of you who really don't like warmer style tuning, then this is gonna challenge that taste. And the reason I say challenge that taste, because I'm one of you guys. I don't care for warm tuning that much. And the Twilight definitely tested that statement with me. Like, I put on the Twilight, I was listening to it, and it's like it's telling me, are you sure, Timmy? Are you sure you don't like warm tuning? You seem to not be able to take me out of your ears. Well, it's true. I'm confused now. I thought I didn't care much for warm tuning, but when it is as well done as on the Twilight, can't help but really like it. Now, it is warm. It is a colored sound, so you're not gonna get neutral, natural, high fidelity type of sound. It is a colored tonality, just keep that in mind. It's warm, it's rich, it has that deep low tonality to it, so male vocals are gonna come across again just bigger than they are. Lower instruments as well, like the cello or the lower parts of the piano, are gonna come across just that much more full and with body. Now, having said that, why does this warm tonality still work? For me, it all comes down to just the amount of warmth that it has. It has quite a bit of warmth, yes, but it doesn't have enough to make anything sound muddy. Vocals surprisingly still jump out of the bass. It's not the most well separated, of course, like a neutral tuning can do, but it still surprisingly pop out of the bass and somewhat lively at times. And that's something that's super surprising for me. Male vocals, though meaty and rich, you know, Frank Sinatra, Michael Bublé, they all sound fantastically warm and satisfying and just emotionally grabbing. And at the same time, a little bit lively, pop out of the background while still sounding rich. And that's something that for me, throughout my time of listening to IEM, is pretty unique to the Twilight. Now, I should say that I have not heard the Turi or the Turi TI. I'm sure those are tuned kind of similar to the Twilight, seeing that they use the same technology and all that. But yes, in just the context of this video, the Softears Twilight is just really well done. Even though it's warm tune IEM that can easily be bad, that can easily be muddy, none of those qualities. Vocal clarity is still there, instrumental clarity is still there, though not at the highest level it can be, but it's just enough to make this tuning finally satisfying for someone who never thought they would like it. On to the upper mid-range, I would say this has sufficient energy, not forward or shouty in any way. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it is a more relaxing tonality, so expect the upper mid-range to be slightly on the tame side. Now, this works well with generally all vocals in my personal opinion, except for some vocals that live in super high ranges like Ariana Grande. Some K-pop or J-pop singer really feel like they are, I wouldn't say in the backseat, but they're not at their full forward lively voice that they can have. Yes, that's really all up to your library, of course. If you don't listen to any music in that genre, then you don't have to worry about it. If you listen to a lot of rock and roll, metal, you listen to a lot of hip hop, then the Twilight is gonna do just fine. If your library is mainly male vocals, the Twilight is gonna be amazing for that. So this, I would say, is a very library dependent IEM. Now, having said that though, is it this satisfying to listen to K-pop or J-pop or female vocals on the Twilight? Absolutely not. It just gives you a different flavor of the song, a more relaxed version of the song, if you will. You won't get a lot of that sparkle coming out of it, but you'll get a nice, rich, warm, heavy tonality that you might appreciate in the songs that you've listened to many times on your neutral or natural set. Now on to the treble. The Twilight does have treble. It has decent extension, but it is tame. The treble is not really highlighted. It does have a sense of smoothness though that I really appreciate. The treble here though, not a lot, is still good quality treble. It's still smooth treble. There's no peaks or uneven weirdness anywhere. There's no harshness to be seen at all. It is probably one of the smoother feeling treble I've heard in any IEM, which is a big praise for a single dynamic driver. Now, it does feel like it has some semblance of air, like cymbal hits, although not the most sparkly or not the most crispy cymbal hits you ever heard. It still comes across distinct, like it's not coming across like it's blending into the background anyway. So it does have some treble, maybe just a touch bit of air there to help elevate some instruments that requires that to sound correct. On to the technical performance, detail, soundstage, and imaging. Let's bring up my scale here. Now, the Softears Twilight lands right around the timeless. Yes, right around the timeless. I'm really hesitant to put it anywhere above that simply because of how it's tuned. It does hide a bit of clarity in the mid-range. It's not going to be as clear or as transparent as a neutral tuning can be, but every other quality about the Twilight is is really good. Like the instrumental separation is well done. The bass and the warmth, it doesn't seem to have too big of an effect of separating those lower instruments from the higher instruments. The depth is really good. The bass hits deep. The soundstage feels wide, though not the most airy or open soundstage. In the height department, the depth and the width is really good. It's just the tuning of it with that warmth and that lack of treble really kind of brings down the detail level just a bit. The warmth hides some mid-range clarity, and the lack of treble hides some little micro nuances that you would get with IEMs with really good treble. Not to say that this doesn't have micro nuances at all. I'm just saying other IEMs with better treble would do a better job here. The Softears Twilight for me, detail-wise right now, lands right around the timeless. Now that's no slouch still, because the timeless is extremely resolving. Don't look at the price tag of the timeless. The timeless is as resolving as anything in $700–800 realm. So the Twilight being in that area is acceptable. It's kind of where it should be. Now on to some quick comparison. I have two IEMs I want to compare to the Twilight today. The first one being the Sennheiser IE600 and the other one being the DA Audio Monarch MK2. Let's start off with the IE600, another single dynamic driver IEM, and arguably right now the king of single dynamic driver IEM. It is fantastic. Sub bass hits deep. There's a lot of treble, arguably too much treble. Now comparing that to the Twilight, I would say the level of details is a little bit leaning on the IE600 side, because the IE600 does have a lot more treble, so the micro nuances are highlighted quite a bit more on that. So I would give the edge to IE600 in detail overall. The one thing that the Twilight does better than the IE600 when it comes to details is going to be the depth departments. The Twilight just feels like it hits deeper. The width of the soundstage is about similar. The airiness of the stage, I would say the IE600 takes a little bit of wind there. But in terms of bass, the low end, bass texture, bass detail in general, and depth of how deep those bass hits, the Twilight does it better. Tuning wise, these two are so vastly different. The IE600 focuses on the sub bass, a lot of sub bass leading into a clean, natural, uncolored mid-range, all the way up to a really sparkly, spicy treble. So it has quite an aggressive tuning style, if you will. The treble is forward, it's gonna present a lot of those like shiny little details at you. The sub bass is gonna be rumbly and almost in your face in a way, but it retains a nice, clean mid-range, correct tonality in the mid-range in general. The Twilight, on the other hand, it's not so correct. It's more of a colored sound. Like I said, it has a warmer mid-range. The treble is also on the tamer side in comparison to the IE600. The upper mid-range also tamer. On an aggressive scale, I guess, 1 to 10, 10 being the most aggressive IEM possible, the IE600 lands around, I would say 7 or 8 in aggressiveness. It's quite forward, it's quite out there, and some people may or may not like that. The Twilight, on the other hand, lands around like a 3 or 4. It's just super relaxing, inoffensive, while still at the same time being lively enough and have enough detail to carry this signature over to, I would say, near in-game territory type of quality. That's where the Twilight is. Like, again, you cannot pick two more different IEMs. I don't think one is better than the other outright. It all depends on your taste here. Of course, if you want a more high fidelity, correct sound, then the IE600, I would say, is more correct. But if you want just relaxed signature that is extremely well done, then the Twilight is a much more preferred option than the IE600. Now on to comparison with the Monarch MK2. They're very similar in price. The Monarch MK2 is $1,000, the Twilight is $930. Similar story when it comes to mid-range. The Monarch MK2 is neutral, clean, correct mid-range, while the Twilight is a flavored mid-range, warm tonality. In terms of bass, I will say the Monarch and the Twilight come similar. Power-wise, the Monarch has a little bit more power, but the biggest difference, I would say, is in the bass texture, bass detail. Here, the Twilight wins over the Monarch MK2. Onto the treble area, the Monarch MK2 has really nice treble extension, not overly sparkly, a natural extension, if you will. One of the best treble response in any IEM that I've heard. The Twilight, I already said it, is very tame, so it's not going to compete well with the Monarch MK2 here in the treble department, though the smoothness of the treble I would say are about equal. It's just that the Twilight has quite a bit less treble than the Monarch Mark II. Detail wise though, I would say I give the edge to the Monarch Mark II. The Monarch Mark II is endgame level resolvability, while the Twilight is a little bit less than that, like a half step down from that, if you will. So why Monarch? Why Twilight? Why Monarch? If you want the most natural, neutral tuning possible, beautiful vocals, just nicely done, balanced tonality, the Monarch is probably the king of that. But again, if you want a relaxing signature, a really well done relaxing signature, the Twilight, in my personal opinion, is probably the best at that right now. So with all that out of the way, this is the summary, the final verdict. For me, I would say the Twilight is quite a niche IEM for those people who are really looking for this style of signature. It is one of the best at it at the moment. Even for me who don't like the style of tuning, I still appreciate it. Actually, not only appreciate it, I really enjoy this to the point where I consider just having this as one of my daily drivers as well, just to switch around with my other really bright IEMs. It's just really well done, and you appreciate every little nuances that comes with the Twilight. So if you're into this kind of signature, or even if you're not into this kind of signature, I still urge you 1000% to give the Twilight a try. Now, of course, with this style of tuning, again, it's going to be very library dependent. It's not going to be for everyone for sure. Again, it's very niche style of tuning. So some of you may outright not like this IEM, and that's completely understandable, while some of you might think this is the best IEM in the world because it fits your taste, your preference, and your library just right. That's the type of IEM that the Twilight is. Oh, one more thing I forgot to mention is the timbre. It's natural timbre. Beautiful timbre. Just no harshness, no BA harshness, no planar metallicness, nothing. It's beautiful, natural single dynamic driver. And also, being that it is a single dynamic driver, it has 100% coherency. That's all.